There are a few steps in the process of investing in the stock market, and the biggest step is arguably picking an investment option, which is the actual product that you'll be investing in. One investment option of the many that exist are ETFs. ETF stands for Exchange Traded Funds. They're funds that are traded on the stock exchange, which is exactly why they're called exchange-traded funds. Now, in general, a fund is like a basket of different types of investments, like stocks or bonds, for example, all bundled up and put together for you. By the way, we're working with BMO ETFs to share this topic with you, and we'll talk more about how you can use BMO ETFs to help you invest in a few minutes. But first, let's talk about how ETFs are a great investment option for a few different reasons, but mostly because they give you diversification while still keeping things simple for you, the investor. When you invest in an ETF, you get to purchase one single investment product. So that's the ETF itself. But that one single ETF can have up to thousands of different investments inside of it. So instead of you buying thousands of different investments on your own, which would be expensive and time consuming, you can buy one ETF, but still get to own all of those different investment options. And if you're wondering why you might want to own hundreds or thousands of investments, it goes back to the concept of diversification. Diversification is when you spread your money out among multiple different investments to reduce your overall risk. When it comes to investing in ETFs, you can diversify in a few different ways, like by different types of investments, like stocks or bonds, by different industries, like banking or technology, by different company sizes, like small, mid, or large cap companies, and or by different countries, like the US, Canada, and globally. Now, all of this information is great so far, but how do you decide what ETF you should actually invest in? Especially if I told you that there's over 12,000 different ETFs to choose from. Well, that's where asset allocation ETFs come in.
Before we talk about what that means, let's start by talking about what asset allocation is. Asset allocation is a way of dividing up your investment portfolio based on the different investments that you own, like stocks or bonds, for example. You want to have a specific balance in your investment portfolio based on how long you'll be investing for, aka your investment time horizon. Now, one way to optimize your asset allocation and to keep things as simple as possible is by investing in asset allocation ETFs. Asset allocation ETFs, also known as all-in-one ETFs, are individual ETFs that provide instant diversification according to the investment mix that you're looking for. Instead of choosing multiple different ETFs to give you that diversification and balance, you pick one fund that does everything for you, hence the all-in-one part. To make it really clear, you buy one ETF, and that ETF contains multiple other ETFs, and those other ETF hold a mix of stocks and bonds across multiple different countries. So asset allocation ETFs are a simple, pre-packaged, diversified investment option. Amazing. But that still leaves us with another question. What asset allocation ETF is right for you?
There are multiple different asset allocation ETFs to choose from, and we're going to walk you through the different options so that you understand the full spectrum of asset allocation ETFs that are available. Now, before we get into that, it's important to mention that there's multiple different ETF providers or companies that offer asset allocation ETFs. They all offer multiple options that range from being made up of 100% stocks down to a mix of bonds and stocks, including the ones offered by BMO ETFs. I say that because we're working with BMO ETFs on this video, which I'm so excited to say. We've actually had the chance to go to a few different BMO ETFs events this year, including their DIY Investor Day. They have the longest history of any ETF provider in the country. As Canadians, we've all seen the shift in general towards Canadian products and businesses, so it's great to know that BMO ETFs are built right here for Canadian investors. They're also a large, established, and trusted Canadian provider who's developed their different investment products with the Canadian investor in mind. BMO ETFs offers a comprehensive suite of ETFs that were developed in Canada for Canadians, and in this video, we'll be using their asset allocation ETFs as an example while we walk you through the different types of asset allocation ETFs that exist. So let's start by looking at the 4 different investment mixes that exist. There's 100% equities and 0% fixed income. There's 80% equities and 20% fixed income. There's 60% equities and 40% fixed income. And there's 40% equities and 60% fixed income. From a high level, deciding what asset allocation ETF is best for you is based on your ability to take on risk. And your ability to take on risk is primarily based on your investment time horizon, aka how many years your money will be invested for. If you have a long investment time horizon and therefore a higher ability to take on risk, that's associated with an asset allocation ETF that has a higher percentage of equities, so for example, stocks. If you have a shorter investment time horizon and therefore a lower ability to take on risk, that's associated with an asset allocation ETF that has fixed income included, so for example, bonds.
Now let's get into the specific asset allocation ETF examples using BMO ETFs. The first one I'm going to pull up here is ZEQT. This is the 100% equities ETF. So here's how ZEQT works. Because it's an all-in-one ETF, like all of these asset allocation ETFs are, this is an ETF that's made up of multiple other ETFs. For ZEQT specifically, it currently holds 6 ETFs inside of it. And all 6 of those underlying ETFs are made up of 100% equities inside of this overarching ETF that you yourself would purchase. BMO ETFs has done the work of bundling up these 6 different ETFs to make things more simple and straightforward for you, the investor, allowing you to get the diversification that these 6 different ETFs bring while only making one purchase. By the way, the official title is the BMO All Equity ETF and the ticker symbol is ZEQT. It's designed to provide equity growth and long-term capital appreciation by investing in global equity ETFs. So you're getting growth and appreciation through the all equity allocation, and you're getting geographic diversification via the global ETFs inside of it. Now the 6 ETFs inside of ZEQT are ZSP, which is the BMO S&P 500 Index ETF, ZCN, which is the BMO S&P TSX Capped Composite Index ETF, ZEA, which is the BMO MSCI EAFE Index ETF, ZEM, which is the BMO MSCI Emerging Markets Index ETF, ZMID, which is the BMO S&P US Midcap Index ETF, and lastly, ZSML, which is the BMO S&P US Small Cap Index ETF. By the way, these exact percentages will change slightly over time, but in general, BMO ETFs is consistently keeping an eye on these percentages and rebalancing them for you so that you don't have to worry about that part. That's the benefit of these all-in-one funds, and it's the same for all the ones that we'll cover today. You can also see in the sector allocation and geographic allocation charts the percentage breakdown of each industry and country that's represented in this ETF. I want to specifically look at the geographic allocation chart here. You'll see that the US makes up about 50% of ZEQT, which makes sense because the US market is the largest market within the global stock market. Then you'll see that Canada makes up about 25% of the ETF, and the rest of the global markets make up the additional 25% or so. You can also see here what one share currently costs, so when you invest in this ETF, you'd be purchasing shares at what the current cost is. Now this price isn't to be confused with the price of the ETF. This ETF and all of the BMO ETFs asset allocation ETFs that we're covering today has a management fee of 0.15%, which was recently brought down from 0.18%, making it one of the lowest fee asset allocation ETF suites in Canada. So this is the first asset allocation ETF, ZEQT.
The next one is ZGRO. This is the 80% equities, 20% fixed income ETF. ZGRO holds 8 ETFs inside of it. Now, 6 of those ETFs are equity ETFs, and 2 of those ETFs are fixed income ETFs. The official title of this ETF is the BMO Growth ETF, and the ticker symbol is ZGRO. It's designed to provide long-term capital appreciation by investing in global equity and fixed income ETFs. So it's still growth focused, but with some fixed income options included to make it a potential option for those with a slightly shorter investment time horizon. Now, the 8 ETFs inside of ZGRO are ZSP, which is the BMO S&P 500 Index ETF, ZCN, which is the BMO S&P TSX Capped Composite Index ETF, ZEA, which is the BMO MSCI EAFE Index ETF, ZAG, which is the BMO Aggregate Bond Index ETF, ZEM, which is the BMO MSCI Emerging Markets Index ETF, ZUAG, which is the BMO US Aggregate Bond Index ETF, ZMID, which is the BMO S&P US Midcap Index ETF, and lastly, ZSML, which is the BMO S&P US Small Cap Index ETF. Now, if we scroll over to the equity sector, fixed income sector, and geographic allocation charts, you can see the percentage breakdown for all of the different industries and countries that are represented inside of this ETF. Now, if we specifically look at the geographic allocation chart here, you'll see that the global markets all represented in this ETF, but that the US and Canada make up the biggest percentages. There's even a higher percentage of Canada in this ETF compared to ZEQT, which makes sense because there's that additional Canadian bond ETF. And you can also see the current price here too. Also, remember that the management fee for all of the BMO ETFs, asset allocation ETFs that we're covering here today is 0.15%. So this is the second asset allocation ETF, ZGRO.
The next one is ZBAL. This is the 60% equities, 40% fixed income ETF. So we're really starting to see the percentages shift even more here. ZBAL also holds 8 ETFs inside of it. It actually holds the exact same underlying ETFs as ZGRO, but the percentages are different because there's more fixed income in this asset allocation ETF. Now, the official title of this ETF is the BMO Balanced ETF, and the ticker symbol is ZBAL. It's designed to provide moderate long-term capital appreciation and income by investing in global equities and fixed income ETFs. So it's slightly growth focused, but with a lot more fixed income options included to make it a potential option for those with an even shorter investment time horizon. Now, the 8 ETFs inside of ZBAL are ZSP, so the BMO S&P 500 Index ETF, ZAG, the BMO Aggregate Bond Index ETF, ZCN, the BMO S&P TSX Capped Composite Index ETF, ZUAG, the BMO US Aggregate Bond Index ETF, ZEA, so the BMO MSCI EAFE Index ETF, ZEM, so the BMO MSCI Emerging Markets Index ETF, ZMID, so the BMO S&P US Mid Cap Index ETF, and lastly, ZSML, which is the BMO S&P US Small Cap Index ETF. Now, if we scroll over to the equity sector, fixed income sector, and geographic allocation charts, you can see the percentage breakdown of each different industry and country that's represented in this ETF. If we specifically look at the geographic allocation chart here, you'll again see that the global market is all represented in this ETF, but this time Canada is the largest percentage geographically. And you can also see the current price of this ETF here. Just like with the other ones, the management fee for all of the BMO ETFs, asset allocation ETFs that we're covering today is 0.15%. So this is the third asset allocation ETF, ZBAL.
The next one is ZCON. This is the 40% equities, 60% fixed income ETF. So the only asset allocation ETF for the majority of it is fixed income options. ZCON holds 8 ETFs inside of it, and it's the exact same 8 underlying ETFs that were in ZGRO and ZBAL, but the percentages are of course different. The official title of this ETF is the BMO Conservative ETF, and the ticker symbol is ZCON. It's designed to provide income and moderate long-term capital appreciation by investing in global equities and fixed income ETFs. So it's less so focused on growth, although that's still a factor, and more so focused on providing stability. Again, this one is a potential option for those with a much shorter investment time horizon. So the 8 ETFs inside of ZCON are ZAG, which is the BMO Aggregate Bond Index ETF, ZSP, which is the BMO S&P 500 Index ETF, ZUAG, which is the BMO US Aggregate Bond Index ETF, ZCN, which is the BMO S&P TSX Capped Composite Index ETF, ZEA, which is the BMO MSCI EAFE Index ETF, ZEM, which is the BMO MSCI Emerging Markets Index ETF, ZMID, which is the BMO S&P US Mid Cap Index ETF, and lastly, ZSML, which is the BMO S&P US Small Cap Index ETF. Now again, just like with the other ETFs, if we scroll over to the equity sector, fixed income sector, and geographic allocation charts, you can see the percentage breakdown for the different industries and countries that are represented inside of this ETF. If we look specifically at the geographic allocation chart again for this ETF, you can see that the global market's still all represented in this ETF, but that Canada isn't just the largest percentage, it's actually makes up over 50% of this ETF. And you can also see the current price of this ETF here. Again, the management fee for all of the BMO ETFs, asset allocation ETFs that we're covering today is 0.15%, including for ZCON. So this is the fourth asset allocation ETF, ZCON.
So now you know what ETFs are in general and what asset allocation or all-in-one ETFs are specifically. ETFs are an amazing tool for long-term investors, and asset allocation ETFs are a way to make ETF investing very simple. You just have to decide which one is right for you based on your current investment time horizon and your personal investment objectives and goals. It's also great to know that as Canadians, we have the ability to buy and invest in Canadian investment products that are offered by a Canadian provider. On that note, thank you again to the BMO ETFs team for working with us on this video to share all of this amazing information. Make sure you check out BMOETFs.com to learn more and invest with BMO ETFs.